Ancient Sumerian gods and festivals form the basis of the harlot Babylon symbols in Revelation. Did you know that? Now, the most mysterious chapters in Revelation are probably those dealing with a system known as Mystery Babylon. Probably more theories have been proposed about what and who it is than any other end-time entity. And since we're commanded to come out of her, O my people, it's tragic that more isn't known about it, because it's going to be a real problem if we don't know about it. Now, part of the reason might be that a number of the symbols the angel gave the Apostle John that are recorded in these chapters are based on ancient Sumerian gods, goddesses, and festivals. The harlot, that's Sumerian. The harlot riding a beast, that's Sumerian as well. Even the name Babylon itself comes from Babel, which was the Sumerian kingdom. If you don't know about ancient Sumer, it's almost impossible, in our opinion, to completely understand the Mystery Babylon symbols, which is why we probably have so many debates about it today. Now, this video is based on a chapter from a brand new book that I'm in the process of writing, Mystery of Babylon, The Woman and the Beast She Rides. We will probably finish it sometime in the summer, but here is a sneak peek on some of the material that's going to be in it. You can see the cover art is pretty dramatic. This excerpt is based on chapter 2 about the Great Harlot. Here is how the chapters about Mystery Babylon start. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters." Revelation 17:1. An angel came up to John to talk. Not just any angel, but one of the angels who would soon pour out the bowls of wrath on the earth. This isn't an everyday occurrence, is it? But the angel wanted John to know that Mystery Babylon isn't escaping the coming judgment of God. And the angel calls Mystery Babylon a harlot. In fact, he calls it a harlot before he calls it anything else. It's his primary description of Mystery Babylon. And this isn't a common everyday occurrence either, is it? Harlot. It isn't a term we use much these days, yet this term is still the preferred translation used in most of our English Bibles. So why don't we go back to 1828, back to when this term was in common use, and look what the original Webster's Dictionary had to say about this term. A woman who prostrates her body for hire. A prostitute, a common woman. So harlot is what we would call a prostitute today, someone who surrenders themselves physically and spiritually for material gain. Economics, then, is an important aspect of who this entity is. It is a system that surrenders itself body and soul for wealth. Specifically, harlots in the Bible were often associated with idolatry. They were frequently temple prostitutes or ritual prostitutes whose act of immorality were part of the worship of false gods. The Bible speaks of these women and men. There shall be no ritual harlot of the daughters of Israel, or a perverted one of the sons of Israel. Deuteronomy 23:17. And this seems to be exactly what the angel had in mind in describing the great harlot, a ritual harlot or a temple prostitute. Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot, who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Revelation 17:1-2. The clients of the great harlot are the kings or rulers of the earth. You know, presidents, prime ministers, senators, kings, sultans, judges, those kind of guys. She leads them into the worship of idolatrous false gods and away from worship of the one true God. And for this act, the prostitute gains financially. The fact that the kings of the earth are her clients indicates that she is a worldwide system, or at least has worldwide influence of some kind over the nations of the earth. The byproduct of these illicit relationships with the rulers of the nations is that the, quote, wine of her fornication, end of quote, which makes the inhabitants of the earth drunk. The unredeemed of the earth are intoxicated by the lies the great harlot is telling to the nations, lies that the kings and rulers then incorporate into the laws of their land. What exactly are these lies whispered by the harlot into the ears of the kings of the earth? Maybe things like, God is not the creator, but evolution is. Maybe sexual immorality is okay, materialism is okay. And maybe Jesus is not the Son of God and not the only way to heaven. And there are probably many, many more such lies. I'm sure that you are aware how these lies are finding their way into the laws of the nations. You are probably also aware of how the wine of this fornication is making the unredeemed of the world drunk. But you probably began reading this book with a preconceived notion of who Mystery Babylon is. A good exercise at this point is to begin to think of how your conception of Mystery Babylon fits with this model of seducing the kings of the earth, making the unredeemed drunk with her lies, promoting the worship of false god, and then profiting by it. It is the primary model, of how Mystery Babylon works. It's exactly what the angel put up front in these chapters, and it's the part that has to do with ancient Sumer. We'll get to that in a second. It is how Mystery Babylon works. Now, how great is the great harlot? As we just stated earlier, Mystery Babylon is likely the largest harlot system ever. It's called the Great Harlot. Not just any old harlot, because there are many, but the Great Harlot, the biggest harlot. The Greek word translated as great is megas, and it means large, great, or widespread. Just a few verses later, we're told the harlot is the mother of all harlots. At first, you might think this means she has given birth to other daughter harlots. But that's not at all what this phrase meant to John. In the Middle East, the phrase mother of all means the largest of all. The USA has a massive explosive called the mother of all bombs. They even have an acronym for it, MOAB, mother of all bombs. In the American offensive in Iraq, Saddam Hussein promised his resistance would be the mother of all battles. So when the angel called Mystery Babylon the mother of all harlots and abominations, it carries that type of meaning, the largest harlot in history. We're also told she sits on many waters. We don't have to guess what this means. A little later in the same chapter, the angel explains it to John. Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. Revelation 17:15. These are all the people of the earth, the same people that Jesus came to redeem by dying on a Roman cross. So this harlot sits on or influences all the people of the earth. It's a massive, worldwide system. Knowing this, again, begin to consider your preconceived notion of what you thought Mystery Babylon is or was. It's the largest system of its type to ever exist. Does it influence all the people of the earth and all the governments and nations? If not, perhaps you don't have the right system in mind. The great idolater. And here's where the information about Sumer comes into play. We have learned that the harlot leads the kings and the rulers of the earth astray into the worship of false gods. She is a temple prostitute, which is how John and the other people of his day would have understood this harlot. This practice of temple prostitution, leading kings into a sexual form of worship, is an ancient practice, something known as hieros gamos, or holy marriage. The kings in ancient Sumer would couple with high priestesses of a goddess named Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of sexual love, fertility, warfare, later called Ishtar. You probably have heard that name, but she started out being known as Inanna. This would take place every year on the 10th day of the new year in the festival of Akitu. Happens to be on Nisan 10. That was the exact date when this would take place. And groups like Wicca and black magic rites, even today, involve similar rituals. So when John writes that the great harlot has had sexual relations with the kings of the earth, he is comparing her to those temple prostitutes of ancient times, to ancient Sumer. Sumer came to power, right after Noah's flood, and probably was the same empire as Nimrod's Babel. And of course, Babel is related to Babylon. But who exactly are these false gods that the temple prostitutes were leading the kings to worship? And who was Inanna? Just a little later, in Revelation 17, we learn that the harlot rides the beast. The subtitle of this book is The Globalist Woman and the Beast She Rides. It's referring back to that exact event. However, I bet you'd be shocked to learn that Inanna, the ancient Sumerian goddess, was frequently pictured as riding a beast. Now, we will discuss this in a lot greater detail in the book that we're writing, but suffice it to say that it is obvious that when the angel told John that the harlot rides the beast, this ancient Sumerian reference to the days of Nimrod and Inanna was the source of the image. John was communicating a prophetic biblical truth about today and comparing it to known ancient accounts. Now, who were these ancient gods of Sumer? Were they just idols of wood and stone? Or is there more to them than that? The Apostle Paul tells us they were and are very real, spiritual beings that are our primary opposition in this life. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Ephesians 6:12. Paul gives these fallen angels some titles: principalities, powers, and rulers. And when the ancient peoples worshiped their idols of wood and stone, they were actually worshiping these demonic forces. They provoked him to jealousy with foreign gods, with abominations. They provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to demons, not to God. To gods they did not know, to new gods, new arrivals, that your fathers did not fear. Deuteronomy 32:16-17. Moses, the writer of Deuteronomy, reinforces that the acts were sacrifices to real demonic beings, not just idols. And the holy marriages of Mystery Babylon and the leaders of our nations is no less an act of worship to these principalities and powers, just like it was back in ancient Sumer. So, was this Inanna one of these principalities? Most likely she was and is. Identifying the events of today with these spiritual demonic forces places them in sharp contrast, to what modern Christians envision them as being. Most Christians imagine our struggles as being against one political party or the other, or sometimes being against one international leader or another. But Ephesians 6:12 tells us our struggles are against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heaven itself. Just let that sink in. Imagine the power they have up in heaven. If you're going to oppose forces like that, you must oppose them spiritually, not physically, because they are spiritual forces. If Christians wonder why they're losing the struggle against some of these powers and principalities, that is why. The king's portion. What's in it for the kings of the earth? Why did the kings and governments of the earth commit spiritual immorality with the great harlot? Why did kings commit the Hieros Gamos, or holy marriage, in the past? It was a yearly source of confirmation of their entitlement to rule. And you know what? It's no different today. The spiritual immorality of the governments with the great harlot is a form of selling your soul to the devil, trading allegiance to that principality in exchange for earthly power. Now, you heard us speak of that Atiku ceremony before. The Atiku ceremony was a New Year's celebration, and thus, like most other New Year's celebrations throughout all the ages, was associated with drinking alcohol. It's no wonder then that in John's vision, drunkenness is featured. However, it's a spiritual drunkenness. The earth dwellers become drunk with the wine of the great harlot's fornication. These are the lies that the governments of the world promote and turn into laws. We're seeing this happen in our world today about climate change, LGBTQ regulations, etc., etc. It's all the wine of this fornication. And the drunkenness is going to have a massive impact on believers. Just look what Revelation has to say a few verses later, talking about drunkenness. I saw the woman, and there it's talking about the harlot, drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Revelation 17:6. Now the people of the earth may be drunk with the lies of the woman, but the woman herself is intoxicated by the blood of the saints. The principality, probably Inanna, who is behind the system of Mystery Babylon, and those who are influenced by her are intoxicated by killing Christians. It appears a great martyrdom of believers is coming. This is what makes understanding these biblical passages so important. The reason is Christians will still be here no matter what rapture theory you believe in. The reason is all of this happens prior to any rapture, prior to the rise of the beast, the Antichrist. How could we say that? Well, click right here to keep watching to learn why these things happen before the beast rises and what might cause the deaths of so many Christians prior to the rise of the beast. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.